for 6 weeks to finish the inlet. And there was just a few feet to go. So the dredge quit for the night. There were some other boats around. And in the night, a big tide came through and opened it up. It really just pushed the dredge practically into the ocean. And it was just big power flow. And the next day, we had an inlet. So, the thing was that we'd gone for a decade without an inlet. There was an old inlet up by Old St. Lucie. And the sand just filled it up. It had been useful for 300 years, and now it was closed. Fort Pierce was then a fishing village, so the fishermen couldn't get out. So the fishing that they sent by train up to the northern markets went from something like, well, I had to figure, but something like 750,000 pounds to about a tenth of that. And people were suffering because it wasn't only the fishermen, but it was the people that depended on them, the ice plant, the barrel factory. And so the town was really in trouble. The challenges they faced were engineering, were naysayers, so people say, oh, you can't do anything about it. It's just God's will. They made an attempt to cut the inlet through a mud creek, and they took mules over to the island, and the bears came and stampeded the mules. There was even a criminal or two that they had to overcome, government red tape, all kinds of things that they had to overcome. First of all, there's something about a port that makes people more tolerant because you're open to the world. And second of all, economically, if you didn't have the inlet, not only the fishermen would suffer, but the boat builders and everybody that depended on them. And this is really true. So many people did so many things to try to help get an inlet for Fort Pierce. And the inlet was discovered by the Spanish, and they used it to come in and during a storm, to come into the quiet waters of the lagoon. But they called it Ice Inlet and the Ice River, the Indian River, because the Ice Indians were the original Indians that lived here. So for 300 years, that inlet provided a path to the sea from between the Atlantic and Indian River. When the British had Florida, Florida remained loyal to King George. So here around it was called Indian River Inlet. They just continued to fish, and so the United States got Florida in 1819, and that was the first map that I could find where it was called not the Ice Inlet, but the Indian River Inlet. And James Gadsden explored the territory and made a report to the president about what was going on. And then in 1842, there was a colony at Old St. Lucie. It was called the Armed Occupation Colony. And the only remnant of that colony is this fireplace that's down Indian River. It's still standing. It has a date, 1844 on it. But they used the Indian River Inlet. And then during the Seminole Wars, the Indian River Inlet, we had 2 forts here in St. Lucie County. Because we had such a good inlet, they could bring military supplies through that inlet and then take them to the other forts in South Florida. And then during the Civil War, there was much activity around our inlet because there were blockade runners and there were small boat raids that come in to the settlers around the inlet. And federal gunboats were patrolling off the inlet. And then after the war, Reconstruction, sportsmen from the north discovered our Indian River Inlet was a great place to fish. And then in 1885, this is what it looked like, the Indian River Inlet. Now Matthew Quay, Senator Quay, was our first wealthy guy, snowbird, and he built several houses up at Old St. Lucie, and that's him in the front there. And he used his influence, which was considerable, to get the federal government to work on the inlet because it was the fishermen had to wait. Everybody had to wait for high tide to get in and out. There's a great picture of the old inlet. And as it began to silt up, everybody got into the business of trying to help. And in 1903, C.T. McCarty tried to start a committee to address the problem because the fishermen were really starting to suffer. And this is Ben Suey. He was Senator Quay's right-hand man, and as I said, they tried to dig with shovels up there. And then in 1910, a hurricane finally just closed the inlet. And the fishermen, they had petitions, they wanted the commission to do something, they wanted somebody to do something, because they had to go down to Sewell's Point to get out to the fishing grounds. And that added all that time to their days going out. But before that, this was the kind of fish catch they had. And this is the picture of the mules that got stampeded by the bears. And they gave up at Mud Creek. And this shows that that's the right figure that I was trying to say before. That it fell from that many pounds to 750 pounds, 750,000. They surveyed Garfield Cut to try to locate an inlet there. And then World War I interfered. I like the one that says, "Halt the epidemic, stop spitting." Now here is, they formed the Fort Pierce Inlet District, a taxing district. And on the left is W.I. Fee. He was really pushing, I don't think we would have had an inlet without him. And he has many descendants around Fort Pierce. And this guy, Goss Tucker, he gave the land for the inlet. He donated that land. He owned it. So here's a great picture, I think, of W.I.F. that's coming into Fort Pierce. And they formed a Fort Pierce Finance and Construction Company, and they started buying land south of Taylor Creek because they envisioned a port. And on May the 20th, 1920, the dredge cuts through the island. You can see it starting to cut through, but at least 50 feet because they had to build the jetties. And here is a glimpse of building the jetties. This is what it says is a barge where the dredge crew stayed while they were working. And on April 19th, 1921, the barge, as they had built the jetty, so the barge came back to dredge through the remaining sand. Here's some boys watching the process.
And this was taken on May the 8th, 1921. And you can see the little bit of sand that's left. And this is the headline. It said, down under here, it says, the Atlantic and the Indian River are married. The wedding ceremony took place when the tide washed through the remaining barrier of sand. These are the first boats through the new inlet. They had a celebration on May the 12th, 1921, and they had boat tours that left the dock at the Cobb Building, and that's some of the boat tours that reached the new inlet. There's an aerial of the pristine inlet that you can see there's nothing there. Now, in 1923, Edwin Benny invested in Fort Pierce Finance and Construction Company. Now, he had come to this area in 1911, and he was farming, we had grows and farms. Now, Edwin Benny, you will find, was a great benefactor to Fort Pierce. It is not properly recognized. Edwin Benny had invested in Indrio, and this is a map of what Indrio was supposed to be. It never got built because the boom went bust. And I at one time lived at Casa Caprona, and my kids used to play in the pine woods next to it, and there were sidewalks that went through the pine woods, and they had light poles out there that just next to the pine woods. They just abandoned the development right in the middle because everything went south. And you can see the two lines, those are the palms that Mr. Benny planted, because he was really interested in having something that looked nice, not just something that looked like just industrial. You know, he wanted to have it. And now this is on the right there. These are the trees that Mr. Benny planted out on Indrio Road. They don't look like this now. They're in bad shape. But that's what they looked like one time, and that's his house on Indrio Road. It's still standing. One thing that the finance company built was a casino, and it was finished in 1926. Most of you probably never saw it. Those of us who grew up here used to have a drink. I had my first whiskey sour. This is another picture of the casino. It was there. I think it was torn down in the 70s. And this is, you can see, this is South Beach in 1925. You see where the jetty is. There's a ship that came in 1925. And there's that white sand they were building the causeway from the sand they were dredging out of the turning basin. When Edwin Benny became a director in the finance company, he loaned $500,000 to save the company because the boom went bust. He also loaned the city of Fort Pierce $25,000. So the fishermen were satisfied with the depth. Well, at first it was only like 5.5 feet, but the old inlet was 4.5 feet. So to them that was an improvement. But the city fathers, they wanted more than just a inlet for fishermen. They wanted a port. So they passed several different bond issues to deepen the port. And there's a dredge going to 18 and then 22 feet. And what I read was every time a ship went in to Miami that had more feet, was able to go through with deeper feet, then they decided to deepen this because they were trying to compete with Miami. That's just pictures of the dredge. I was interested to see how they took up the sand with those scoops. Now there's Mr. Benny with, I haven't identified these people. Actually, I found this picture in Mr. Fee's papers, and I need to identify these other people. This was the first large ship to enter the deeper inlet, and this lady sitting on the jetty there is Dorothy Benny Upton. She's Mr. Edwin Benny's daughter, and she was also a great benefactor to this area. She had a swimming pool out at her house, and she used to take children and teach them to swim because so many children, especially black children, were drowning in the canals. This is the opening of the port, a celebration. War down on 2nd Street. This is just some interesting pictures. Then it was Mr. Benny who pushed for a refrigeration terminal because the railroads were charging so much money to ship the fruit and the vegetables that we were producing here. Cost of shipping a 90-pound box of fruit after they opened the refrigeration terminal. See, they put the fruit and the vegetables in that, and then keep them until they could ship them. And the cost went from $1.74 to 50 cents a box of shipping.
Wow.
Just an aerial of the port. Edwin Benny died coming from Tallahassee to Fort Pierce. I'm sure that he went to Tallahassee to do business for the port, and his funeral was in Greenwich, Connecticut. Now he had fine homes in New York and in Greenwich, Connecticut, but he really liked Fort Pierce. He registered to vote in Fort Pierce, and all the businesses in Fort Pierce closed during the hour of his funeral. That was in Greenwich. And it got really too expensive for Fort Pierce to maintain the port. And they kept asking the feds to take over, and they finally did in 1935. And they deepened the port to 27 feet. It's just an interesting picture. With a big ship going with. This is when we had big ships coming in here. And Mr. Benny gave the land for the Coast Guard station. This is a Vigilant, it's the Coast Guard boat, and they did a lot of rescue during World War II because we had U-boats sinking our ships off our coast, and they would rescue the survivors. And the Navy took over our islands from 1942 to 1946. This is a gate that was at the entrance to South Beach. This is an LST in the inlet. This is the Inlet Walkway, where those swings and everything are in the path. That's what it used to be. You can see these guys were trying to make landings in Normandy and the Pacific Islands. This is Tucker Cove back when the Navy had it. This is the island when all that's Navy.